Welcome back, Curry Crew, to The Real Chef Curry, and today we have a delicious recipe for you guys, so without any further ado, let's get to it. So guys, this week's recipe is delicious, it is mouth-watering, it is very flavorful, but like always, before we jump into the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, punch that notification bell, and we're gonna get straight into the recipe. So guys, for our first step of our Thai noodle soup, what we're going to be doing is we're going to cook up our tofu as well as start preparing the base for our soup itself. So how that's going to work is we're going to start off by sauteing one piece of ginger as well as a clove of garlic that I've finely diced, and we're going to saute that in this pan right here. And in this other pan, what we're going to do is we're going to pan fry up our tofu so that it is nice and crispy before we add it into our soup later on. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to take 1 teaspoon of olive oil and drop it into our soup pan. And then I'm going to take another teaspoon and drop it into our non-stick frying pan for the tofu. And what we're going to do is we're just going to wait for this oil to heat up. And once it's heated up, we are going to start sauteing our ginger garlic mixture as well as our tofu. So right now I have both sides on at about a medium heat, and all we want to do is let the oil heat up a little bit. The way you know your oil is heated up is when it starts moving around kind of like water ripples, and that's how you know it has heated up to the right amount. So right now it's still moving around a little bit like oil, so I'm going to wait for it to get a little bit hotter. And then what we're going to do is once it gets to that temperature that we're looking for, we're going to lower the temperature to about low, and then we're going to start sauteing both of our mixtures that we want to do. So by now, both of them have reached the low point. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down the heat to low. And in one side, I'm going to add in our ginger and garlic mixture. And we're just going to let that cook in the oil and saute up a little bit. And you want to let it cook until it gets a little bit golden brown. And that's how you know your ginger and garlic are good to go. And then in the other one, I'm going to add in our tofu. So I took about half a block of tofu, and that should be more than enough for the amount of soup that we are making. So we're going to be making 4 servings, so basically 4 bowls of soup, and half a block of tofu should be more than enough for 4 blocks of soup. So I'm just going to spread out the tofu in the pan so that there's no overlapping, and we're just going to make sure that we have all of the tofu touching the bottom of the pan. And then I'm going to put the heat back up to a medium for both of them. And here we're just going to mix through our garlic and ginger a little bit. And once your garlic and ginger starts turning like a golden brown color, that's how you know you're pretty much done cooking the ginger and garlic, because you don't want to burn your ginger and garlic. You just want to get it to the point where it's nice and crispy. So our ginger and garlic are pretty much done. So what I did was I took 1 small onion and I basically chopped it up, and I'm going to add that into this ginger garlic mixture. And all we're going to do is just saute up these onions until they start turning transparent, and basically you can start seeing through them a little bit. And once that's done, we're going to start adding in the rest of our ingredients. Meanwhile, what we're trying to do with our tofu is we're just trying to give it a nice crisp outer edge and outer coating, because we don't want it to be super mushy and soft. We want it to be a little bit nice and crunchy on the outside, but soft on the inside. So we're just going to let this pan fry out until it starts turning golden brown on all sides. So I'm just going to turn down the heat to low on our onion and garlic and ginger mixture right here, because I don't want the onions to burn. So I'm just going to reduce that heat to low, but the tofu is still at about a medium right now. Okay, so our onions are pretty much done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding in our vegetable broth. And for this recipe, we're going to be using about 4 cups of vegetable broth. So 4 cups of vegetable broth in our case is going to be this entire carton. So I'm just going to add that into this mixture right here. And I'm just going to mix up our tofu a little bit. I don't want it to burn. Like I said, we're just trying to crisp up the tofu. We're not trying to burn it. So So our tofu is going to keep on cooking for a while because that's going to take longer to cook than our actual broth that we're making here now. So I've added in our vegetable stock. We're just going to give this a nice little stir. And then we're going to bring the heat back up on this to about a medium. And what we're going to do is once this reaches a gentle boil, we're going to start adding in a few of our other ingredients, including our coconut milk, our brown sugar, our green chili paste, and some of our veggies that are going to go in here as well. Meanwhile, our tofu is still cooking on the side right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait about 5 minutes so that this brings up to a gentle boil, and then we're going to start adding in our other ingredients. So as you can see, our tofu is starting to get a little bit of a color on it. We're going to keep letting it going because it's still just mildly yellow. We want it to be a little bit crunchy on the outside. But what we're going to do in our soup now is I'm going to add in an entire container of coconut milk into our soup right here. Next, we're going to add in 3 teaspoons of Thai green chili paste. We are going to add in 2 teaspoons of soy sauce. And the reason we start with 2 is because soy sauce can be a little salty, so you can always add a little bit more later on. But you only want to start with a little bit for now because you don't want to overdo it. And I'm also going to add in 3 tablespoons of brown sugar to contrast a little bit of that spice that we have in there. And make sure in between that you're checking on your tofu. You don't want it to burn. So make sure you give it a flip here and there from time to time. Yeah, our tofu, as you can see, is now starting to get a little bit of a crisp edge on each side. So this is good, so you want to just make sure you flip it over so it doesn't burn. And we're also going to add in about 2 teaspoons of rice vinegar. You don't want to add too much rice vinegar or else it's going to become way too sour, but you can start with a little bit and then you can always add a little bit more on top later on. So all we're going to do now with this soup is just let it cook until it reaches a boil. And in the meantime, we're going to keep stirring our tofu. And most of the sides have now started to cook and get brown. We're just going to make sure that we cook it on the sides that still haven't browned up completely. So you could just flip over the sides that haven't browned up completely and give them a little bit of a nice crust as well. The main reason we're frying up the tofu right now in the pan is because we don't want it to be too mushy when we're eating it. We want it to have that little bit of a contrasting texture, or else everything in there tastes mushy, especially once you add the noodles and everything else. So you want to have a little bit of different crunch and everything like that. And at this point, the soup is at about a high heat, while the tofu still has been at about a medium heat this entire time. Because we don't want to cook the tofu too quickly on the outside, or else the inside's still going to be uncooked. So you just want to make sure that you're doing it at a slow heat and steadily letting it cook all around the edges. We're not even going to cook the noodles right now. The noodles we're going to leave it to the end because they are literally the easiest part about this entire dish. See, as you can see, some of our tofu is now starting to get that crisp edge. So we just want to see if we can get like at least 90% of all the tofu that we have in this pan to get that similar type of crisp edge going. So our tofu is almost done. And what we're going to do is once our tofu is done and crispy all around, what we're going to do is we're going to add it into this soup along with a few of our veggies that are going to go in with it. And we're just going to keep mixing it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start boiling the water to get ready for the noodles. And make sure that every few minutes you just keep giving your soup a little bit of a stir, as to make sure that nothing sticks to the bottom of the pan, as well as just incorporating all those flavors that you have put in there. Because we put in the paste, it's going to take a while for it to dissolve completely into the soup. So you just want to make sure that you give it a stir from time to time to help that process speed up a little bit. Okay, so as you can see now, our tofu has had that nice golden color all around. So all I'm going to do is now I'm going to transfer it from this pan into this soup itself. But before I do that, of course, I'm going to turn off the stove because it's very dangerous to transfer. Always turn off the stove. Come on, common sense. So what we're going to do is we are going to drop that into our soup. And along with that, what we're also going to be adding in is we're going to add in about a cup of bean sprouts into our soup. And we're also going to add in a cup of chopped up baby corn. And then we're just going to give this a nice little stir, as all of our ingredients now are getting mixed up in the soup. And let me tell you guys, I know we don't have like the capability to like transfer smells through like video just yet, but if you could smell this, you would be like salivating. Your mouth would be watering so much right now, because mine already is, because it smells so good. I personally love Thai food just because like it always has that nice little spice, but you can always get a nice richness of flavors, right? You can taste almost all the flavors that are in here, whether it's the ginger, the garlic, the onion, you know, the green chilies that are in here, the coconut. Everything comes together and blends together in like a harmony. And now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna let this cook off until it reaches a boil. In the meantime, what we're gonna do on this side is we're gonna start boiling our water for our noodles. So I'm gonna bring that over right now. So what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna boil up our water for our noodles. This will take about maybe 5-10 minutes. We wanna put the heat up to high and just bring the water to a boil. And then once it's at a boil, we're gonna turn it off and we're gonna soak our noodles in this. We don't need to cook our noodles when the heat is on, because they're already automatically going to cook when the boiling water is already added to them. And you only wanna cook them for about 6 to 7 minutes. So we're just gonna wait for this to boil, and then we're gonna start with our noodles. And then once that's done, we're ready to plate. Okay, so our water has already been brought to a boil and it's already bubbling. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add in our noodles into this. So I'm gonna take about 8 ounces of rice noodles and I'm just gonna drop them in there. But before I do that, we're gonna turn off the heat. And all we're gonna do is we're just gonna drop them into the hot water and we're gonna let them cook for about 7 minutes. We don't wanna overcook them. And the reason we turned off the heat is because they don't need the heat to cook. They just need hot water. And then we're just gonna mix them around a little bit in here. And they're automatically gonna cook on their own. So what you might wanna do is just set a timer for about 7 minutes and then you should be good to go. Next, what we're gonna do is in here, we're gonna taste our soup to see if we need any seasoning. Okay, so based on that taste, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in about a teaspoon of salt. And the salt you're always gonna do to taste, because you don't wanna over salt your soup. You always wanna just do the right amount. Because if you oversalt it, you can't really reverse it, but you can always add a little bit more salt whenever needed. Now while your noodles are cooking, you probably just want to give them a quick little stir, because you don't want them to stick to the bottom of the pan. So you can just use tongs and just toss them around a little bit until that they're no longer sticking together or to the bottom of the pan. So after about 7 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to drain this out. And then once they're drained, we are going to first put noodles into a bowl, and then we're gonna pour the soup with all of our veggies and everything over it, and then you're ready to serve. You can serve it with some sriracha or some chili, whatever you wanna serve it with. Okay, so what I did was I basically took our noodles, drained them, and then put them in a bowl. And all we're gonna do now is we are going to serve our soup over the noodles. So we're just gonna pour it over. And there you have a delicious Thai noodle soup ready to serve. So guys, hope you enjoyed the video. We're gonna be back next week with an amazing brand new video, and keep on cooking.